Hello, and welcome to the Cyber Resilience Brief, a SafeBreach podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Hudney Piquant. He is our senior sales engineer based in Texas. We are so happy to have you here today. And today we are going to talk about Hudney's adventures talking to hackers on, was it Reddit or the dark web? Remind me.
Oh, the dark web.
Very cool. Okay, so Hudney, tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in this situation where you're mining information from hackers.
I'm a very curious person by nature. I actually went to school for philosophy, but most definitely transitioned into cyberspace. I'm always trying to understand like what's actually happening in reality, right? And one of the ways I was trying to understand that was going into the forums, chat groups, starting in working with computers. So back in the day, we're all downloading torrents. We've all done it. You get into these chat rooms and you start understanding the wild and how that works and what's really going on. I just wanted to understand how do they recruit people. This particular group, Conti, they're one of the bigger groups right now out there in the wild, and they basically had a vetting process. And I thought it was really interesting because it kind of shows you that this is no longer just fun and games. Like there's a lot of order here. This is a business. They might as well post a job on LinkedIn. They basically had a post out there where they were looking for vetting specialists, so to speak, right? So this is a way to recruit to see how good you are. So they basically said that, hey, we're looking. First of all, they had a campaign slogan. They said they called it "Make Ransomware Great Again."
Get
Um,
out.
and, it's just wild, man. Like they have HR. It's a very organized business, so to speak. And they basically were just saying that, hey, look, we're looking for hackers that can find PII on high profile people, whether it's executives, politicians, celebrities, you name it. Forget about showing resumes and stuff. It's not even about that. It's like, what can you actually do? And the proof is, hey, if you can hand us someone's medical records or something like that, you qualify.
Wow, that sounds like the process to get into high tech. I mean, did they give you a formal assignment?
Oh, no, no. So for me, I didn't go full blown with it, but you could see like what the process was. And there's some companies that similarly do that now. And if you do want to join certain legit bug bounty group, they vet you. So they have their own different processes. But it was interesting to see what they were looking for because this is what made it. So this is what my angle was, because I'm most definitely on the good side here. My angle was to understand that the adversary's focus is, hey, if we can get PII, so what that's telling me is that their idea is that they're not even trying to do that much work, right? They want to do what's the least best, quickest way to get their return of investment. And that's going to be typically to the human. And so if they can get PII and high profile individuals, that means that more than likely they will, it's kind of like the assumed breach concept, they will get in. They'll find a way to get in. So now this better helps me understand how I can counter that.
Interesting. So just to get a little context, I mean, I know that you said that you were curious, but did this come up when you were working in the pen testing space, or was this before that? Was this just your own curiosity?
Yeah, for sure in the pen testing space, because when you're trying to, when you're trying to protect your organization, and this is more on the red team side too, you want to understand because naturally you're simulating the adversary. You want to do what's real world. So in order to do that, you have to think like a criminal to get a better understanding.
Interesting. And what else did you learn? You said that the operation is much bigger than I think the average layperson would suspect. But what else were you able to uncover about how they operate and how we should be thinking about it as security providers?
I mean, the biggest thing is that they're very proactive, and it stinks. See, they play a different game than we do. I mean, once they have an opportunity, they don't have to do too much. As soon as they find some type of availability, something that we're not paying attention to, I mean, they're in. So their discipline is a little bit different than what we have to do. We have to do a little bit more work because we have to be really almost perfect. And they don't necessarily have to be perfect. That is very problematic. For our side, that just lets you know how we need to be seeing things from a very proactive standpoint. So that means that for me, what I've learned is in order to really be proactive, it's one thing to be proactive, but it's another thing to actually simulate a situation so that I can be proactive about it. You can be proactive and have your defenses, but you still want to figure out how would this actually work if it were to happen. So let me simulate a scenario, a situation, so I can kind of see. before the thing really happens, before the attack really happens.
So you're saying it's not just methodology, it really is about the psychology behind hacking.
Oh,
It's about the mindset. It's about
oh yeah.
being quick and dirty to get what you want instead of it, even when you're protecting enterprises, you've got to get in that mode.
Oh yeah, man. You most definitely have to have the adversary mindset. That is a phrase that I love, but you have to most definitely be as cunning as the enemy, cunning as the adversary. Like if you want to understand what they're doing, you have to think like them. That's a good strategy. I mean, you want to have compliance for sure, but in conjunction, you also want to understand how did the adversary think. So then from there, that can build your strategy as well.
Interesting. So it's funny because as a product marketer, I'm always thinking about ways to know our customer, and that would definitely involve going on Reddit boards, building communities. What you're suggesting is that security teams should also employ someone to go in and read what's going on in the dark web to really get in the mind of threat actors.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. We want to be able to have intel to understand, and it doesn't have to be so broad. It could sometimes even be a bit more granular to, what business you do. A lot of times the adversary, they know the business better than certain people in the business because they're really trying to understand what are your crown jewels? Okay, what assets generate the most revenue for you? What are the things that you need to have to keep your business running? Let's say the adversary is in your environment. There's a particular dwell time that they get to kind of understand your day to day, right? So that's a very psychological as well. So one of the things I've learned is that the technical piece is there for sure, right? But when you look at the Verizon data breach report, the human element. There's a joke because there's this a thing called OSI layer. There's 7 layers, but there's an eighth layer that needs to be called the human layer, right? Because
Mhm.
this is a very important layer, and this is the psychological part that's really plaguing us still to this day. The adversary does really well with that, right? Because the human is the weakest link. We need to focus on the psychology aspect as well. It's just not technical, but there's a huge psychology piece that needs to be considered, right? Let's say, for example, there's an attack, we call it MFA fatigue. I mean, just look at the title itself, fatigue, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to fatigue you to the point where you're just so frustrated that you're going to allow the adversary to be able to bypass a control that is meant to stop the adversary, but it's fatiguing you. You see, well, that's very psychological.
Wow.
There's actually positive aspects in this too, is that like from example of there's a thing called trace labs actually. It's pretty cool, but it's the same concept where you're using OSINT. And this is what the Conti was trying to get from when they're recruiting is like they wanna see like how specialized, how how sharp you are in OSINT, right? Because that's one of the biggest aspects of the first phase of an attack is gather intelligence. The trace labs is pretty cool because you're actually doing the same thing with this organization, because you're trying to find missing people, like legit missing people. And what you do is you can use your OSINT skill set, individually or work with a team. And you basically, with the data that you find of this missing person, you basically send that over to the authorities so that they can use that to go and find these missing people. So there's some actual cool aspects to OSINT. OSINT is not necessarily has to be a bad thing. Even the dark web is actually not necessarily a bad thing either. There's some bad things there, but there are also just things that are available there that you can't just search from Google. You're almost getting everything versus just limited information.
Thank you for that insight. I have to say I follow a lot of true crime podcasts, and I'll be listening in for that ear now. You have a broad range of experiences in general in the penetration testing space, and now also with what we're doing here at SafeBreach. Would you mind talking for a couple of minutes on what you think we do differently?
Yeah, one of the things that I love about what SafeBreach does is we're in the business because there's bad actors, right? That are doing things that they're not supposed to, but they actually give us work. They give us a career, right? You have leadership, you have CISOs, they're given a budget to build a cyber program. And typically that's going to start with on the blue team side where you're defending your castle. So you're given a budget to buy tools to defend your castle, to build the controls, which are great, But the problem is these tools need to be configured and not just one time, a continuous fashion, especially if something changes at the workplace, you then may need to configure that device, right? But the problem is this is where the biggest spend is, but we have never truly focused on validating what are these tools actually working the way that they're supposed to? So a lot of time with the pen testing, we are simulating what the adversary is doing, but from an external standpoint. But sometimes because of scope of work, most companies, it's hard to basically say, hey, I see that you're able to come in from my window or my door, whatever. But now that you did that, I don't necessarily want you to come in and start doing things. Now, there are internal pen testing that you can do for sure. But again, it's always scary in a sense because I don't know what's going to happen in the product environment. But again, when you're still doing those pen testing things, whether it's external or internal, you're not really focused. Your focus is not validating those controls. And SafeBreach does such a good job on focusing on, wait a minute, like, let's really test these things I'm spending a lot of money on. Do they actually work as they need to? Right? Like, it's not to say that if it's working to perfection, we're going to get no breaches, but it does bring in proactive aspect of, okay, this is what can happen. And if it were to happen, we would be okay here. So now let's focus on what we need to focus on, right? We have legitimate proof that we would be okay here because we've actually validated these tools that we bought. That's a really big deal to validate these expensive tools that they're purchasing.
Yeah, I'm sure, just thinking about everything you've just described in your experiences so far, do you have any predictions on what's going to happen, not just in the pen testing market or in our general market, which is adversarial exposure validation, but what did you see about hacker behavior that makes you predict what might come next from a threat actor side? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. With AI, I mean, it's just reality. I have to talk about it. It's just going to speed things up, less errors. Let's say you're doing a phishing campaign. Typically, the things that you're looking for are the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. Could be grammatical, spelling errors, things of that nature. With AI, that's just not an issue anymore. So the AI is going to speed things up, make it more sophisticated. So if the adversary is going to be more sophisticated, we then have to be more sophisticated. That you still need to basically simulate what they're going to be doing, but we most definitely have to be more sophisticated in how we're doing it. The AI is going to really improve their skill set. What's interesting is we also have to have the right perspective because if you notice in the dark web, what happened is like a lot of these adversaries, they'll buy these rootkits. They'll buy a tool that's basically does all the things. So they're not necessarily so intelligent. They're just kind of like pressing buttons too, in a sense. But that's also smart. Here at SafeBreach, it's the same concept with Propagate that we have. We have a great tool that kind of has the same concept where, hey, like all those different tools that's all stitched together here, let's just put it in one tool and let it run, right? So we are one having to be an AI, but at the same time, we just really have to match what's going on out there in the wild. Obviously, not doing anything illegal for sure, but in order to keep up, we do have to understand again what is the adversary doing and how can we best match that. So I believe we're doing some cool things, kind of keeping up with that.
Yeah, and for that, we are so grateful that you are here and you're giving us this perspective.
For sure, I appreciate being here. This has been a great experience already.
Thanks, Idney. Well, thank you so much for your time, Idney. And I'm sure we'll be having more conversations in the future. This was great.
All right, thanks.
The Cyber Resilience Brief is a SafeBreach podcast. It's produced by Tova Devorin and executive produced by Adrian Cully. Sound design provided by Adobe Podcasts. Distribution provided by Podbean and extra support and love from the SafeBreach team. For more information on how adversarial exposure validation through SafeBreach can protect you and your business, no matter where you reside or what industry you're in, please visit us at www.safebreach.com.